The Indianapolis Colts are riding high after a 33-8 drumming of the Miami Dolphins, but they have a far tougher test against the Denver Broncos upcoming. So who are we going to be looking out for? What subjects are going to dominate this AFC showdown? And which players do you, the fans, think have to step up the most so that the Indianapolis Colts walk away with a victory against the AFC West contenders? Well, let's talk about it. Welcome to the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast, as always, presented by Indianapolis Colts on SI.com. I'm Drake Wally, co-deputy editor for the site, co-host of the show, and I'm joined by none other than the one and only Noah Gebert, co-host of the show, analyst for the site. You know, Noah, we are full swing into just ridiculous hype. For the Colts. They come off a huge win. We talked about it a little bit on Monday. But, hey, in this league, it's a long season. And even if it's a tough opponent, crappy opponent, down or up opponent, if you get a victory, the minute that the next day hits, you pretty much have to set your sights on the next opponent. Yeah. How are you doing, man? What do you think of this team heading into the Denver Broncos matchup? Because this is a freaking tough team that they're about to face.
Yeah, I think what we saw week one is good, right? From the Colts,
Sure.
Obviously good from the Colts side of things. Like you see in that, like I mentioned, the proof of concept of what Shane Steichen kind of thought this offense could be with Daniel Jones at the helm and operating efficiently with Shane Steichen's play calls. And then we finally got the first look at the new look defense under Lou Anarumo. I mean, we were going over like key performers in terms of the players that really stood out during last week's game. But really, I think the coaches stood out more than any of the players in terms of Shane Steichen and his offensive play calling and the game plan he had dialed up. And the same for Lou Anarumo on the defensive side. I felt like the scheme was more so the star of the show against the Dolphins, more so than any other defensive player. Not to say that there weren't any good defensive or offensive performances. I feel like there were some good standout performers. I just feel like as we go on throughout the season and you're facing some of those tougher opponents, you still want to see those good performances from the coaches, but also we want to see some of these performers continue to shine and improve. So, yeah, really looking forward to see who steps up this upcoming week.
Yeah, and we'll kind of just go ahead and kick off the show here by recapping the game. For those of you that didn't watch the show on Monday or somehow you missed the game, just checked out the box score, you want to hear some quick analysis, me and Noah got you covered. So obviously, you're walking into a game, home opener. Jim Irsay is getting honored, and it's Carly Irsay-Gordon's first legitimate game as the actual CEO, and her sisters, Kaylin Jackson and Casey Foyt. So much was riding on this game, and look, I understand that the Dolphins. I mean, look, post this game. What has surfaced that's coming from the Dolphins locker room, from their coaching staff, from their players? Ladies and gentlemen, this is a team that is in full panic mode. They are falling apart already. And you got team, players only meetings happening like Noah and I were discussing after week one. That is never good. That basically means that they don't trust the coaching staff and that they're meeting with themselves. But look, regardless, man, the Colts went out there, Noah. They took care of business. They were 7 for 7 on their drives as far as scoring, 3 touchdowns, 4 field goals. They probably could have put up more, but they were just drumming the Dolphins. I don't think they were worried. And then on the defensive side of the football, I mean, you got just a taste of what Lou Anarumo can do to a quarterback. And my God, I mean, Tua was, like Sam Darnold back in the day, he was seeing ghosts. He had no idea what to do after that second read. What do you make of that game? Because yes, it's probably a team that's going to finish with like 5 or 6 wins, if we're being honest, but it's still an NFL squad, and they went out there and they damn near shut out that opponent. They didn't even score till the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I mean, and even if the Dolphins end up being the worst team in the NFL this season, who knows if they will be? Yeah. Winning against the worst team in the NFL is still good. Like, you want to go out there, and especially the way that they won. They didn't go out there and they eked out a field goal in the last minute to beat them. I mean, what we were pretty much, I think it was every victory that the Colts had last season was by 8 points or less. So they haven't had a double-digit win since. I can't tell you the last time. It wasn't last season, so good to start out this season with a double-digit win against a lesser opponent. Obviously, we're going to see more of a test coming up. But, it's just great to see them kind of go the other way on some of the narratives that were going on about the Colts in terms of the pessimism being at an all-time low in that fan ranking, and going into year 9 of Chris Ballard, 3 of Shane Steichen, 12 years without a season-opening win, and kind of reversing the narrative on all of those things. It was about a perfect 4 hours of football that you could have had on Sunday for Colts fans, watching Jim Irsay go into the Ring of Honor and seeing just them come out and dominate, and all the flaws that you thought might show their head in week 1 didn't end up showing their head, didn't end up mattering. So yeah, I mean, it's good that you get past that. I haven't seen a Colts team with some confidence in a while, so I'm curious to kind of see how that confidence carries over into the weeks to come.
Yeah, and regardless, you went out there and you've lost to everyone, in week 1, and you go out there and you just, like Noah said, guys, I know that this isn't a good team, and the full disclosure, the Dolphins defense looks like they could be the worst unit in the league. So who knows what happens there? They still have 16 games to play. But like Noah said, you don't want to beat a team that looks that bad 24-21 or, 17-14 on, like he said, a last-second field goal. You want to beat the crap out of them, especially when you're at home and you have all of that momentum, motivation, that energy, that new look. You got a new quarterback you're trying to help represent. Look, everything worked. I mean, Rigoberto Sanchez could, like I said in the last episode, dude could have gone and left and gotten himself a steak at St. Elmo's and ate it. He wasn't even needed in that game. So, Andrew Harmon, thank you so much. $5 super chat. You are a legend. We win by 10 plus. Check the tape from the Titans. We are not the Titans, and we are at home. Every week is different, man. Every single week is different. Schemes are different. Certain offensive schemes beat fantastic defensive schemes. I mean, everyone was saying that the Chiefs were going to go out there in Sao Paulo and beat the Chargers, and they didn't. I mean, anything can happen, but I appreciate the confidence because this is a difficult team that the Colts are about to face. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and dive right into it. The first thing is, of course, going to be the offense, but just overall, Noah, after that victory, how do you personally feel about this offense? I know everyone's talking about, I'm throwing away Danny Dimes. I hate that name for that guy. Indiana Jones is what I'm going with. Or what'd you say? Danny Dives?
Danny Dives.
Danny
until they
Dives.
stop it, that lives on.
Danny Dives, man. Everyone's talking about Daniel Jones, rightfully so. Went out there, had himself arguably the best performance of any one game of his career. But this was a Shane Steichen game, man. I mean, he just absolutely had he was in the bag of Miami's defense. So what's your feeling going into this game of this offense? And I guess, after such a dominant victory, do you think that there's going to be a similar approach to facing such a vaunted Denver defense?
Yeah, it's hard to really even say what the approach was necessarily against the Dolphins because they didn't really run into any issues where something wasn't working and they had to adjust. So, yeah, I mean, I guess the approach, they came out aggressively, chose to be on offense first to kind of set the tone, came out passing the entire drive, very little use of Jonathan Taylor in that first drive. The second drive they came out, they ran the ball 80% of the plays that they were on the field for that second drive. So they were super balanced on offense. So I would expect them to try to maintain some of that balance to keep the defense a little bit on their heels in terms of what they're going to be expecting when they're on the field. And that's something like we've mentioned all the time with Tyler Warren, when you have a guy like that, that's versatile and can be on there for all three or be in there for all 3 downs. That's something that you're just not telegraphing when you have Tyler Warren on the field. You're not telegraphing whether it's going to be a run or a pass. And in the same vein, when you have Jonathan Taylor out there on all 3 downs and he's actually performing well in pass protection and he's catching the ball out of the backfield, and you feel comfortable having him out there on all 3 downs, when you're not subbing in a guy like Trey Sermon like they did last year that, it's going to be a pass and he's in there for a pass protection. Don't worry about covering him on a route. So maybe we continue to see that from Jonathan Taylor. Maybe they try to rotate in Tyler Goodson, DJ Giddens a little bit more on those passing downs. But I really like that they were kind of a little bit stubborn with how they were using Jonathan Taylor and how they were willing to keep him in for all 3 downs. Because he's an effective player, just hasn't been good in those 2 areas, but he was in week 1. I want to continue to see that in week 2. I expect with Tyler Goodson being a little bit more healthy than he was in week 1, we'll probably get some doses of him on 3rd downs. And so we might not mix that in as much, but with the workload that Tyler Warren got in week 1, I fully expect that to continue. One, the workload that he got, and two, how he was able to produce with that workload and not really disappoint in any way. He was great run blocking when he was on the field, very prolific as a pass catching threat as well. So I expect to see that. And just excited to see them keep that balance. What we saw from Daniel Jones was making the easy plays. For the most part, there was a couple. The crosser route to AD Mitchell was a little off target, didn't allow him to run after the catch. He skied a pass to Michael Pittman. But if we're nitpicking only 2 plays like that, and those are like the screen pass, especially, it essentially didn't matter. That was on that first drive where they drove down the field anyway. There weren't really any back breaking plays from Daniel Jones. I want to see them continue to avoid that, which I think can be a little bit tricky. You asked Daniel Jones to make a few big plays last week, and you'll probably need that to continue throughout the season where he's making those plays. And he hit on every single one of them last week. I don't expect that to be the case throughout the season. You can't expect that really of any quarterback to hit every big play that you ask him to. It's not always going to go as well as it did on last week. It was so smooth. You have to expect some hiccups. So maybe that deep ball to AD Mitchell isn't completed. Nobody would fault AD Mitchell or Daniel Jones if that ball wasn't completed. That deep ball to Alec Pierce on the left side might not be completed this week if they go for that. You wouldn't fault either of them for that either. It's just kind of the luck of the draw and how things go and the odds of the game. So, I expect them to try to keep a similar approach. It's going to be hard to maintain the same success level that they had last week, though, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, what they did last week was utterly ridiculous. Okay, like Daniel Jones goes from just being a laughing stock in New York, and he's walking to the bus, and you got fans screaming at him 10 yards from his face, that he sucks and everything. And you go from all that to going to Minnesota, and then the dude plops down in Indianapolis. And there is something that I do want to say about Daniel Jones, and this is something that I noticed, and you have to respect it. He didn't just win this quarterback position battle because Anthony Richardson isn't good. Okay, Daniel Jones went out there and seized an opportunity, and he worked his ass off, and he looked like he had been preparing for this moment for a long time. And so he is going to put forth his best effort going forward to replicate those kind of performances. And if he can even look close to that, more often than not, ladies and gentlemen, the Colts are going to win football games. So we'll have to see. But yeah, one of the things that actually, let's get to Paul Wilson's super chat real quick. It's a big game when Drake's pythons are out and the apple juice is flowing. You guys are ridiculous. Every time I wear a tank top, you guys talk about the gun show.
I feel like that's every week. I feel like every week's a big game.
Every week's a big game. Paul, you are a legend, a menace in the best way. Thank you so much. And, we should all be drinking apple juice. It's good for the soul. So, but yeah, so, I guess we can kind of bounce back and forth here. I think it's going to be a very heavy dosage of Jonathan Taylor. And I think that when you're talking about the way Denver's defense is built, they're going to go after the quarterback. They're going to put pressure on Daniel Jones. I understand they played the lowly Titans, which, you look at Brian Callahan's post-game press conference, guy doesn't even know the rules, of the game of football. So, I mean, that's a whole different ball game. I don't know what's going on with the coaching staff in Tennessee, but Cam Ward is a very, very promising talent, and he was 12 for 28. All right. But you look at the tape and he was throwing with anticipation. His receivers were just not on the same page as him. He knew what he was doing. He was making those throws. But the thing is, this is a Denver defense that sacked him 6 times. They sacked him 6 times for 50 yards lost. So this is a real big. This has Jonathan Taylor written all over it. Noah, I think that last game Taylor had 18 carries, 71 yards rushing, nothing too wild. Didn't even average over 4 yards a carry. He had 3 catches, but I think that they need to do a little bit of a reverse notion this time, because I think Denver's going to try to take away the short passing game. So I think there's no better way to open up your passing game than to lean on your 2-time Pro Bowl, former All-Pro running back. And, the one area where the Titans did have success against the Broncos was running the football. I mean, they had a 71 total yards. Tony Pollard really kind of struggled. So this is a Denver defense, guys, that is going to push this offense. But I think, Noah, that it's all going to lie on how good of a game Jonathan Taylor has. And don't forget, last season, I understand there was the fumble before the goal line, but Jonathan Taylor was eating in that game. I mean, he was eating that defense alive. And while it was Anthony Richardson, poses a way bigger running threat than Daniel Jones. Look, if you even take your eyes off Jones for a second, he still has wheels, so he can still make you pay. What do you think about Jonathan Taylor here? Because I honestly, if I'm Shane Steichen, I'm giving that man the football 25 times out of the backfield. Yeah. I'm relying on the interior blockers, especially guys like, Quentin Nelson. And, of course, you've got outside runs. But I don't even think it's just Jonathan Taylor, man. I think I want to see if he's healthy. I want to see a little bit of Tyler Goodson. I want to see some DJ Giddens. I want this to be a run-heavy approach so that you can open up things for Daniel Jones against a very, very pressing secondary.
Yeah, and I think this is a good reason to bring up Tony Copeland's super chat from Monday that we missed.
Yes.
Yes, this is perfect. Exactly what he was talking about. He says, we will run the ball down the esophagus of the Broncos, 173 yards to be exact. The rest will take care of itself. P.S. Our defense is exceptional. So, yeah, that's kind of what Tony had in mind, is I'm sure he's wanting to see a heavy dose of Jonathan Taylor. Obviously, he's the huge run threat for this Colts offense. Daniel Jones maybe gets mixed in there a little bit too. I don't know how many they're going to try to design up for him in terms of getting the run game going. If you're doing a read option, trying to just create as many threats and as many points of conflict as you can for the Broncos defenders. I'm expecting Jonathan Taylor to get a little bit more of a workload than he did in week one. He could have sat that whole fourth quarter with DJ Giddens in there, and it would have been fine just because of the situation that the Colts were in. But I expect it to be earlier in the game, especially. Probably see a little bit more out of Jonathan Taylor in terms of the rushing attack. But I mean, last week when you came out firing, throwing the ball with Daniel Jones and it was working so well, there was really no way to go away from that. But when you're facing a secondary that's not Rasul Douglas and Storm Duck, and it's Pat Surtain and Brandon Jennings and Talanoa Hufanga instead, like these guys, that's a different animal that you're dealing with. So maybe you don't lean as so much on the arm of Daniel Jones, and you try to kind of play to your strengths. But that being said, the pass blocking from the offensive line, I thought was going to be a point of emphasis in week one, and thought maybe it was going to be a little bit of a question mark, especially there on the interior with the two new starters in Bortolini and Gonsalves. But really, they held up really well and were one of PFF's best graded units in terms of pass blocking in week one. I expect that to continue in week two, and I feel like the run game should continue to improve as well in terms of their run blocking ability. That's kind of what Gonsalves was known for anyway when he bumped in there inside the guard and you were worried about the pass protection. So I hope they continue to play to their strengths. Quentin Nelson again looked like a beast on the inside. Bernard Ryman, Braden Smith have always been good at road grading down there and getting to the second level on these run plays. So I'm excited to see Jonathan Taylor used kind of in a very specific game plan against this Broncos defense and see how that works out for him.
Yeah. And Andrew, thank you, man. But we're both MVPs, me and Noah and all you guys. I mean, this has been such a badass community. You guys have made this show so much fun, and you are just as much a part of it as we are. So thank you so much, man. That means a lot. Thank you for the super chat, the support. And we find a lot of joy in doing this, my friend. So look, I love that you just brought up Tanner Bortolini and Matt Gonsalves, because I wrote a piece. I can only do 5. Because otherwise people will get bored to tears trying to follow 10 keys to winning against the Broncos. But I put one of them I just put it as Tanner Bortolini and Matt Gonsalves. All right. These two, I understand Miami was underwhelming, but they still had Zach Sealer. And, he has had 10 plus sacks in his last 2 seasons as a defensive tackle, which is crazy. That's crazy production. He was a non-factor in that game. And, obviously now you've got Zach Allen, who is a just freak of nature. I can't even remember. I don't have the stats in front of me, but he had like 30 plus quarterback hits last year. I mean, this is a guy that will absolutely pelt your signal caller if you let him. But I mean, these two are going to be huge. These two might be the 2 most important pieces to the Colts offensive line, because I don't want to look. it's kind of going against what we said. Yes, the Dolphins are an NFL team. They're still professional, right? It's huge to beat any NFL team you beat. It's a big deal. But this is a way different animal you're dealing with. Tanner Bortolini and Matt Gonsalves, I think, despite the fact that they played great, Noah, I think that Denver has targets pointed at these two guys.
Yeah.
I think that they are going to bring the absolute pain towards 60 and 71. They're going to do everything they can to overwhelm these two. And there's no worse pressure or gap let-ups than right up the middle. Everything just gets blown to pieces, and it's really hard for a quarterback to escape when the pressure's up the middle, just like it's hard for a running back to find a gap and avoid, a defender who's penetrating through the middle. So I dare say that if Tanner Bortolini and Matt Gonsalves can hold up, I don't expect them to have as crisp a games as they did.
Yeah.
But if they can hold up, man, it's going to be difficult to stop Jonathan Taylor. I mean, it's going to be really hard because he's got that one punch ability, one cut ability. He's a strong runner. I would love to, like I said before, see some Tyler Goodson if he's healthy and some DJ Giddens. But what are your thoughts on these two? Because yes, Quentin Nelson's also on the interior, but no one's looking at Quentin Nelson like, hey, we need to go after Q.
Yeah.
That's just not what you do because you will pay dearly for going after Quentin Nelson. But what are your thoughts on these two? Because, I mean, I think that this is really a game where they prove themselves, not against the Dolphins, but right here against the Broncos.
Yeah, and they kind of started in week one very much to their advantage that they went out and put out good film. So you're not going into week two showing some of the blemishes that you can be attacked with right there. So, and you've got an experienced defensive coordinator in Vance Joseph for the Denver Broncos who would very much find those on tape, find those blemishes and find those weak spots and exploit them. It's good that you didn't give him the ammo for that, right? So he's still an experienced defensive coordinator that's probably going to be able to scheme up some things that are going to give you some trouble and give them some stress there up front in the interior. It's not so obviously on a plate like it could have been if they went out there and they had a less than stellar performance in week one. So yeah, I hope they can continue on with that. Yeah, I want to see the run game get going a little bit more effectively. Of the two, you would say that the pass game was probably a little bit more efficient than the run game for the Colts offense last week. I don't necessarily expect that to be the case throughout the season. I don't think anybody has ever really expected that. When you get really good and efficient passing games from this offense, you're going to be taking that kind of as a bonus or a cherry on top, and you're going to be always kind of expecting that run game to be your bread and butter and the thing that you can fall back on. So I do want to see them come out and go up against a more talented front, like you mentioned. You mentioned Zach Allen, John Franklin Myers, also somebody really prolific up front that you're going to have to deal with. So I'm excited to see them take on maybe a higher level of a defensive front. We know Miami. I feel like every time that we bring up the Broncos and how we're comparing them to Miami, we're trying to downplay the talent that Miami has. But I mean, if you're an NFL team, you have Zach Sealer, you have Tyreek Hill, you have great talent on both sides of the ball. And they proved themselves at least in one test, but very much like Lou Anarumo's new scheme on defense, like Daniel Jones is the starter, like Tanner Bortolini and Gonsalves in their first start. One start's not enough, and they're going to have to keep growing throughout the season.
Yeah, and this is going to be a massive test. I mean, like you said, Vance Joseph, while he was an absolutely dreadful head coach, the guy is a fantastic defensive coordinator. He's going to be able to really figure out if there's any cracks in the Colts' armor offensively. He's going to find it. He's going to try to exploit it. So that's going to be a lot on Shane Steichen. And also, don't forget, I mean, it's a guy we don't really talk about too much. Tony Sparano Jr. He's going to need to have this offensive line ready to go. Paul Wilson says Noah is definitely the co-MVP, so he gets $10 in your face, Drake. Hey, you know what? I'll still say thank you, Paul, even though that really hurts the soul. No, I'm just kidding. But thank you so much, Paul. You're both amazing and very, very generous. Thank you so much. So, one more piece that I want to talk about with this offense. It's someone who I know everyone's talking about Tyler Warren, which, look, with good reason. Okay, I expected Tyler Warren to have a pretty good game. Did I expect him to lead the team in catches? No. Did I expect him to lead the team in targets? Yeah. No. Did I expect him to get a fullback carry? No. Did I expect him to be pancaking dudes in the run game? No. But there's one guy I want to see a little bit. There's actually two guys I want to see show up a little bit more than they did. and that's Josh Downs and Alec Pierce.
Mhm.
Now, Alec Pierce's game is it clashes with Daniel Jones's tendencies. That's the problem. But I really, really want to see Pierce make a couple of big plays, get more than one catch for 36 yards. Josh Downs had 2 for 12. I mean, Josh Downs was not open. He was held in check. A lot of that has to do with the fact that Pittman and Warren took up 13 of Jones's 22 completions. But this is going to be a game where I think Denver, I mean, you got to think, man, they're going to have Pat Surtain. I mean, Pittman's going to see a lot of Pat Surtain, okay? And then I'm not sure if it's going to be Nick Benito. I would assume it's more Jonathan Cooper, maybe Talanoa Hufanga that Tyler Warren's going to see. But Josh Downs, I mean, he's going to be matched up potentially with a guy like Riley Moss. I think this could be a game where he goes out there and he gets like 5, 6, 7 catches. What are your thoughts on 1 and 14? Because they didn't really show up in that game, or not show up, but they really weren't factors in that game against Miami. But I really think that you're going to need Downs to win short. You're going to need Pierce to at least take attention away from the defense deep, so that you can open up everything else, and especially that ground attack. Because, look, if there's no ground attack or the Denver stuffs that ground game, I got faith in Daniel Jones, but I don't know if right now you're looking at him after even the Miami game going, you know what, you can carry the load for this offense on your shoulders.
Yeah. And I'm not going to say anything about the arrow maybe pointing down on Josh Downs or Alec Pierce because of the performance they had in week 1. Frankly,
that's fair.
Frankly, weren't needed. Right. Alec Pierce is a guy, what he does and what he does well, and you want to keep him on the field to have that threat posed to the defense at all times. And that's just something you're going to live with. Is he's not going to be the most productive at all times, but he's going to give you that deep shot every now and then. And he's going to be going to pose that threat to the defense to make them stay off a little bit. I think we're going to see that probably all year for Alec Pierce. 1 catch for 39 yards is probably going to be a similar stat line to another game we're probably going to see at some point throughout the season.
Yeah.
And you're just going to be all right with that, because sometimes he's going to pull down 4 for 150 and a touchdown, and you're going to be walking off with a win because of him. But yeah, I kind of lean more towards Josh Downs in terms of somebody that the production might differ a little bit. One, because Minkah Fitzpatrick was lined up against him most of the time against the Dolphins. This week, you're going to see Jaquan McMillan, who's an all right slot defender, but he's not Minkah Fitzpatrick. You're probably going to target that. You're going to see Jedi Barron sometimes in the slot, probably also a guy that we talked about a lot during draft time as a potential Colts target. So, yeah, those are the guys that you're going to see against Josh Downs. And maybe you need to turn to him, right? They attacked the outside of the Dolphins defense with their receivers more often by going with Michael Pittman with all those targets. Even Tyler Warren, some of Tyler Warren's targets were on the outside. So, yeah, I expect Josh Downs to be a little bit more of a game plan because of the personnel that you're going up against. And when Pat Surtain's locking up on the outside, I expect to see less targets going towards Michael Pittman. This is probably the game where we're going to see Josh Downs have to step up if we want to see a similar level of efficiency for the passing offense.
Yeah, and with that being said, obviously, I'm not even going to get into that. Daniel Jones is he's got to put up a good performance. You're a freaking quarterback in the NFL. Yes, you're going to have to put up a good performance, but it's about that interior offensive line. It's about the ground attack getting going smoothly, and you start churning things, and then it is about guys like Josh Downs and guys like Alec Pierce being able to command the short and deep game, because then that's going to help open up. It just helps open up everything else. But we're going to go ahead and get here because I didn't even realize we got a crap ton of stuff to talk about here. So we'll just kind of try to make it a little bit brief, but also informative. Sean Payton is an absolutely incredible offensive mind. He's one of the best ever, in my opinion. Drew Brees was a great talent, but he also had Sean Payton. His best football was when Sean Payton was the head coach of the New Orleans Saints. Having said that, he doesn't go out there and play the game. He's not out there under center. He's not the one dealing with all the pressure. Ladies and gentlemen, the Titans might have lost this game, but they put 14 pressures on Bo Nix. Mm-hmm. Okay. Bo Nix went out there and he threw 2 interceptions. He fumbled the football. He completed 25 passes for a mere 76 yards, which, if you do the math, that's like about seven yards per completion, So now you're dealing with Lou Anarumo, who fooled a veteran quarterback like Tua. All I'm going to say is this. There's a lot of question marks because you've got guys like Charvarius Ward out. Jalen Jones is out. So you're looking at Xavier Howard and Mekhi Blackman to have to step up. But you also have DeForest Buckner. You have Grover Stewart. You do, even if Latu doesn't play, you still have Tyquan Lewis, and you still have Samson Ebukam, who no one's talking about. Everyone's talking about Latu's pick. Samson Ebukam went out there and played him. He had a show. He put on a show out there. So this could potentially be a very bad matchup for Bo Nix. I mean, like the way Anarumo called that defensive performance, it was absolutely magician-like. What are your thoughts here on the defense? Because this defense might not have its top cornerback and a promising cornerback, and potentially its top edge rusher. We don't know that yet. But, man, I don't know. The way that Anarumo puts guys in position, if they operate as smooth as they did on Sunday, Bo Nix is only in his second year, and he just kind of fell apart against Denard Wilson and his scheme. I don't know, man. I think Anarumo has an opportunity here to really fool a young quarterback into throwing some really stupid passes.
Yeah, I think so too. I think the game plan's got to be different than what you had with the Dolphins.
Yes. Yeah.
We talked a lot about kind of what we were worried about and how we weren't really banking on the pass rush too much of the Colts last week because Tua gets the ball out so quickly. I think he has an internal clock that runs a little bit faster than someone like Bo Nix does. I think Bo Nix can fall back on the athleticism with his legs a little bit more, and
he can
more
run.
comfortable.
Oh, yeah.
He is more comfortable doing that. I think that's where he found most of his success in Week 1 against the Titans was being able to pose a threat, scrambling and running the ball. So I think that's kind of this type of quarterback that Colts have had difficulties with in the past. But again, this is an entirely new defense, so it's hard to tell whether that's going to be a problem that persists throughout different schemes or whether that's fixed with this new addition of Lou Anarumo. So I'm excited to kind of see what the game plan looks like coming out. You're probably still going to throw a variety of coverages here. They flooded those hook and curl zones to take away those quick reads for Tua. I kind of expect that to be something that continues. They just need to have a plan for once that first read is taken away from Bo Nix for what he's going to do after that, because he's not really known as a guy who's going to go through a ton of progressions.
At least not yet.
Yeah, at least not yet at this point. Fine quarterback, but not somebody you're necessarily worried about sitting back there in the pocket, going through 4 or 5 progressions and finding the open guy. So take away that quick read and then be prepared for what he's going to do, if he's going to make a play with his legs or not. So I'm excited to see those defensive ends. One, some pressure on a guy like Bo Nix, but also keep containment, finish plays when you're running around and trying to grab him in the backfield. I think that's going to be important. You brought up Samson Ebukam, which I think is something we probably should have brought up a little bit more in our review episode of Week 1. Samson Ebukam had 4 QB pressures in 17 pass rush snaps.
He dominated.
It's almost 25% of the time he's getting to the quarterback. Just for comparison, he had the same amount of pass rush snaps as Latu, and Latu only had 1 pressure. Obviously, the interception changed the game. That's an entirely different conversation. But just in terms of pass rush win rate and the way that he's affecting the quarterback, Samson Ebukam very much looked back to form like he did in 2023. And I'm excited to see if that's something that continues as we go into Week 2. That being said, you're also going up against a much better offensive line, I think. Good pass blockers, good run blockers, Mike McGlinchey, Garrett Bowles, Quinn Miners, really good members of that Broncos offensive line. So you're going to have to deal with a different animal up there, just like when we mentioned the Broncos secondary. I think it's just a different level of talent this Colts defensive front's going to have to deal with.
Yeah, and, at the end of the day, I mean, don't forget, I know it was his rookie season, but last year Gus Bradley's defense picked off Bo Nix 3 times. And it's static. It's very conservative, and it allows receivers to move. So I'm very intrigued, very, very intrigued to see what Lou Anarumo has cooked up for a young quarterback. On paper, it sounds like kind of a nightmare for a young quarterback dealing with a scheme like that where you got defensive edges dropping back in coverage. So we'll have to see, but we're going to go ahead and dive right into what to expect from Denver's offense. Very simple here. In the last game, Denver, they found Troy Franklin and Cortland Sutton for a total of 105 receiving yards on 10 catches. Of course, Cortland Sutton did Cortland Sutton things, and that was lead the team in catches, lead the team in targets, lead the team with 1 touchdown and in yards, and even had the longest catch. But it was R.J. Harvey and it was J.K. Dobbins, and honestly, Bo Nix ran the ball 8 times. It was the ground attack that really helped Denver get over because the passing game wasn't really there. So, you had 151 rushing yards, right? But here's the thing. I mean, they're going to run the football. They're going to run the ball. But 50 yards of that came from one play from R.J. Harvey. Okay? You take that away, let's say it's like a 2-yard gain. You have basically 103 rushing yards on 29 attempts. Okay, so I fully expect Denver to throw the football, or run the football. But also, Noah, they're going to try to find both Sutton and Franklin because you're not going to have Charver. More than likely, he's in a concussion protocol, man. He's all but out of the game. Charvarius isn't going to be there. Okay, Jalen Jones he had a non-contact hamstring injury. This is going to be on Mekhi Blackman, guys like Jonathan Edwards, undrafted free agent who made the squad, guys like Xavier Howard, who literally only had a fumble recovery. That's all he did. He did not have to do a damn thing in that game against his old team. Not a tackle, not a sack, not a deflection, nothing. So you're looking at those two. If I'm Sean Payton, I am telling Bo Nix, dude, look at 29, find 4, and work those two because you got a 32-year-old veteran who's still getting used to being back in the NFL, and Mekhi Blackman, he's still getting used to this scheme. It's not like he's played with Anarumo before. So what are your thoughts on that? I still think they're going to run the ball effectively, but I also think a guy like Evan Ingram, despite the fact that he only had 3 catches for 21 yards, I mean, he's one of the most deadly tight ends in the NFL. If you give him open space, he could be a real killer for you.
Yeah, in the preview, you mentioned Darren Waller last week for the Dolphins and how that kind of might pose a matchup discrepancy. It'll give you a little bit of problems. Darren Waller wasn't so much of a problem in the Dolphins, but the same principle I think applies here to Evan Ingram. Yes. This is the exact kind of guy where you don't know who you have on your defense to match up with him. Especially if you have a guy like Charvarius Ward out. You wouldn't put him on Evan Ingram, but that frees up some other people. Maybe Kenny Moore follows around Evan Ingram. It's hard to really find somebody on your roster that you feel comfortable with covering him. It's not going to be Zaire Franklin. If you want to come out with a win, maybe Cam Bynum is the guy that you can kind of pinpoint in that slot and have his eyes a little bit more open for a guy like Ingram. I think he should be a focal point. Cortland Sutton should be a focal point. You mentioned, without Charvarius Ward, you don't have that number 1 corner that's going to follow a guy around and be able to lock up this one guy who's a threat. So, and then they've got, Troy Franklin, Marvin Mims. These are guys that they trust to get down the field with speed. Xavier Howard, I would very much expect them to take a deep shot to Xavier Howard's side at some point. 32-year-old off of a year of football after a bad leg injury. Yeah, you want to test that. I think you would be doing yourself a disservice by not testing that. And then, just probably every other snap, you're probably trying to keep an eye out for what Mekhi Blackman's doing over there and how he's adapting to this defensive scheme. He's one of the guys Lou Anarumo said that he trusts him because of his speed and his ability to pick up this defense like he has. So, really, that's kind of unusual in terms of the Colts corners that have been playing because Charvarius Ward's not really a speed guy. Xavier Howard's definitely not at this point a speed guy. Kenny Moore, not a speed guy. Jalen Jones, not a speed guy. Mekhi Blackman maybe is that guy that is the speed guy that you can trust to stay deep in a cover 3 zone or to run man-to-man with a guy that might be going deep like Franklin or Mims. So, they're going to be on the field, and I feel like the Colts probably feel a little bit comfortable with those guys, but that's something that if you're Sean Payton, you're definitely eyeing and keeping an eye on who's on who during which snap and where you can take advantage of those matchups.
Yeah, and it's not a weakness, right? It's just you got to think about familiarity with Mekhi Blackman. You got to think about the rust that might be still getting shaken off by Xavier Howard. I don't want to sit here and say Xavier Howard can't play freaking football. Okay, he can. But, I mean, he barely played. He didn't play many snaps against the Dolphins. Neither did Blackman, so we'll have to see. I fully expect, though, Evan Ingram to be moved around in line and out in the slot. So I think Kenny Moore's going to see plenty of him. Joe Botch is probably going to see plenty of him. But keep an eye on Franklin, Sutton, and Ingram, because those are three guys that can really cause issues. And I mean, you don't want to forget about Marvin Mims. He's the home run hitter. So, but it's really that ground game, kind of similar to what we said about Indianapolis. I think that they're going to try to open up things. What will we see from the Broncos defense? Relentless blitzing. I think they're going to try, of course, to load the box. Every team that faces Indianapolis is going to try to load the box. The first thing that I would say to my football players, if I'm their DC before facing the Colts, is number one, first and foremost, you can't let 28 beat us. If Jonathan Taylor starts beating you, you're screwed. I mean, Shane Steichen's going to open up his whole playbook, but it's going to be a lot of pressure because this team absolutely manhandled the Titans offensive line. I mean, they destroyed the Titans offensive line. And in fact, mother of God, I'm looking at this game and I almost lost. I had to double take and look at this. Guys, they had 28 pressures. 28 pressures against Cam Ward. Okay. Nick Benito, 6. Zach Allen, 6. Jonathan Cooper, 3. Justin Strnad, 3. Jonah Ellis, Jaquan McMillan, DJ Jones, 2. I mean, good God. This is a team that's going to try everything they can to get in the bag of Daniel Jones. More than ever, the offensive line is important. So I fully expect Denver to bring everything they can. They also hit Cam Ward 8 times per PFF. I don't care if you're Patrick Mahomes, Noah. You get pressured that much, you get hit that much, you're going to start to freak out. You're going to start to see things in your peripheral vision. You're going to start to feel the pressure and get rid of that ball. We've seen even the greats like Peyton Manning do it. So what are your thoughts on this defense? Because I also expect them to really force Daniel Jones to try to throw deep. Yeah, I think that they're going to try to force him to throw deep, and they're going to put those corners right up on the receivers so that he doesn't get a lot of time. Because when you press and you have pressure like that, I mean, good Lord, if both those things work, I don't want to say this about the Colts because this is a Colts podcast. You could be screwed if you're able to press your receivers and you're able to bring pressure. That's a nightmare for anybody.
Yeah, it's really a perfect storm on the Broncos defense where you have edge rushers. Nick Benito just got the big contract. You've got people who can push the interior, and Franklin Myers and Allen, like you mentioned. You're willing to blitz like that and bring guys like Justin Strnad up the middle. And then, you have 2 corners in Riley Moss and Pat Surtain who are good press cover man corners, right? And that's really just kind of they did it for a reason. That's how this team was built, and it's schemed up for that. So you have to have a plan for that. I think my focal point would be that interior pass rush. We already kind of went over that when we were talking about the Colts offense and how important it is for Bortolini and Gonsalves to have a good game here. But that's really a strength of this Broncos defense is Zach Allen, John Franklin Myers up there in the interior and the pressure that they can create up the middle. When you bring pressure in the interior, there's nowhere for you to step up. That creates a situation where you do have to scramble outside. Daniel Jones, I think, can be effective while doing that, and he did show in week 1 a couple of plays that he was effective while he was doing that and making some plays on late reads and just defenders reacting to the scramble drill that was called by the quarterback. So you probably see a little bit more of that in week 2 than you had to see in week 1. Like I mentioned off the top, Daniel Jones kind of made all of those plays when he was asked to make them against the Dolphins. He's probably going to be asked to make even more, and he should make less of them. Just law of averages says he won't make 4 for 4 on terms of those plays when he has to scramble and really make something happen. If we see him come out and make 7 or 8 plays out of character and just running out of pocket and scrambling and hitting those guys, that's when we start to have a totally different conversation about Daniel Jones. But for now, we'll just assume that'll probably be a point of pressure probably all season for the Colts. And you want to see Daniel Jones make those plays more often than not, but you have to kind of expect that those things are going to happen and they're not always going to flip your way.
Yeah, and look, it's just the law of averages here. It's also just the law of talent. Okay, Vance Joseph's a good defensive coordinator, guys, and this defense has been built to absolutely cause havoc, and that is what they did. I understand. I personally feel like Brian Callahan's not a head coach. I'll just go ahead and say it. But at the same time, you're looking at this defense like I know it's Tennessee, but for God's sakes, 28 pressures in one game. That is bonkers. That's bonkers, man. I don't care if it's a rookie, crappy team, good team. That is absolutely chaotic to have to deal with that. So Indianapolis has got their work cut out for them. Denver's defense they are going to be ready for Daniel Jones. So I also will say this. I do expect Shane Steichen to be ready for Vance Joseph. So I think it's going to be awesome seeing Steichen versus Joseph and then flip the script and you got Peyton versus Anarumo.
Yep.
I can't wait for this freaking game. It's going to be awesome. So we'll go ahead and get the Colts X factors here. So we'll go ahead and start on offense. For me, it is all about Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor is going to be the focal point here. He was until he dropped the football in front of the goal line last season, he was beating the ever-loving tar out of this defense. I mean, no one could stop him. The whole game flipped after that, and rightfully so. Momentum is a tangible thing, ladies and gentlemen. So I foresee 20, 25 carries, maybe 28, 29 touches. I think he's going to do just fine, but I think that you got to get him going early. You got to get that momentum and that mentality established. You could kind of put a subcategory here that Bortolini and Gonsalves are also X factors. But for me, offensively, it's Jonathan Taylor. And then defensively, it's DeForest Buckner. DeForest Buckner, Jeffrey Simmons actually caused 7 of those pressures for the Titans. DeForest Buckner is every bit as good as Jeffrey Simmons. Okay, if he can go out there and he can cause havoc, that's going to pose big problems for Bo Nix. And we've seen Buckner on tape throw offensive linemen, literally Reggie White throw them to the side. So those are my X factors, offense and defense. Who do you got here, Noah?
Offense, I'm going to go with a very popular choice, and it's not really somebody we talked about a ton in this episode. That's Tyler Warren, somebody we talked about a ton last week. I think for the same reasons that you're mentioning Jonathan Taylor as an X factor in wanting to get that run game going early. Tyler Warren's going to need to be effective again as a run blocker out there at tight end. If he's playing 100% of the snaps out there at tight end, he needs to be effective as a run blocker like he was last week. And then you mentioned, the pressure that they're going to bring on the quarterback. You're going to need to get the ball out quick. If they're pressing your outside guys with Surtain and Moss, you've got another outlet there at tight end in Tyler Warren. So that's a guy that I expect Shane Steichen to scheme up some ways to get him the ball quick in the downs, so he can make some plays after the catch like he did that 3rd and 4, 3rd and whatever, when he spun around 2 defenders and then just got that first down when it looked like it was not happening when Daniel Jones checked the ball off to him. I expect to see some things schemed up so you can get the ball in his hands and really make those plays. And then we move on to the defensive side of the ball. I'm going to cheat here and pick 2. They play the same position, and that's Xavier Howard and Mekhi Blackman. I think both of these corners are kind of a tandem duo. There's different ways that you're going to obviously try to attack either of these guys. Are you kind of expecting Xavier Howard to know what he's doing and have seen some things, being a vet, being with Lou Anarumo before, but maybe not have the athletic ability to keep up with some of these guys or really contest these balls for deep with Marvin Mims. I kind of expect, I don't want to give too many hints to my final score prediction, but I am going to go out there and say I do expect a Marvin Mims touchdown of 30 yards or more to happen.
Didn't that happen? Didn't he do it last year?
I feel like he did. Maybe that's just subconsciously. Maybe subconsciously I'm pulling back to bad memories of that and kind of preparing myself mentally for that to happen again. But if it's not Marvin Mims and it ends up being Troy Franklin, I do expect a deep ball to get by this Colts defense at some point because of the pressure points you have there with Xavier Howard and Mekhi Blackman. Communication is probably not going to be as on point as it was in week 1, just because of the nature of bringing some new guys in. So that's kind of But that's kind of where I worry. But then again, you want to see guys like Xavier Howard, who I think wasn't tested a ton in week 1 against the Dolphins, but he looked fine, right? He didn't have really the opportunity to prove himself or disprove himself, but he looked fine out there in the snaps that he was playing. So you hope that continues, and that year off was really good for his body, and he was able to recover and get back to his former self. And then you want to see kind of an ascendance there of Mekhi Blackman, show why that they traded for him and decided to go with a guy like him instead of someone like Juju Brents on the roster, and just see how this kind of fits the scheme and how he can fill in case of emergency like they're doing now.
Yeah, so Mims did not have a long touchdown, but it's really interesting because Bo Nix sucked. That Denver ground game sucked. Didn't even average over 3 yards a carry. Okay, Bo Nix did have 3 touchdowns. Okay, he also had 3 picks. Okay, so it was really the Colts shooting themselves in the foot. And I know we haven't mentioned his name in a while, but it was really Anthony Richardson that that kind of lost the game for the Colts. I'm not trying to say anything negative, but Richardson really struggled last year, and of course things have changed. But the Denver roster, they really haven't changed that much. You know, they had a terrible tight end room. In fact, the only tight end room, ladies and gentlemen, that could have possibly been worse than Indy's last year was none other than Denver's. You got Adam Troutman, the one and only, leading the squad last year. So I love that. I love that you brought up Xavier Howard and Mekhi Blackman, because funny that you mentioned that. In my 5 keys to victory against the Broncos, my final one was Xavier Howard and Mekhi Blackman. So I love that you brought that up, because neither one of them really played much. Yeah. I mean, you cannot tell me that. Let's take a look here. I have it in my article here. Yeah, Howard played on 22 passing downs, 31 total. Mekhi Blackman had 20 passing downs, and I think he had 22 total. Yeah. So these are not guys that were out there playing a bunch, and they are going to be playing a bunch. So we'll have to see if the age is not a factor for Howard, and if the adjustment to go from part-time or from new scheme to part-time to full-time with a new scheme is too much for Blackman. Because I will say, man, Courtland Sutton is never talked about. He's barely mentioned among the best in the NFL. Courtland Sutton is an absolute dog, and he will ruin your football team if you let him. So
I think there's some resemblance there to Michael Pittman in the way that he plays his game. And I feel like maybe it's just that type of receivers, maybe a little less talked about. I think Courtland Sutton's a little bit more explosive than Pittman even. I would be even taking another step back and being a little bit more wary of what Courtland Sutton can do for you. But like, he is a bona fide number one, plays the game in a super tough way. With Charvarius Ward on the roster, I think that would be, or active and healthy, I think that would be a matchup you would be okay with, because Charvarius Ward's also a very physical and aggressive corner, and I think he would match up well with a guy like Sutton. You hope Xavier Howard's that guy still, and you're going to find out this week.
Yeah. Well, we're going to go ahead and get to the biggest threats from Denver. I'll go and do offense, and then I will do defense. I'm going to got to go right back to it. I actually will just say this. I'll say that the biggest threat offensively is Sean Payton. The way that he calls games, the way that he can whisper to a quarterback. I mean, Sean Payton is a genius offensively, but it's awesome because he's facing a defensive genius in Lou Anarumo. So I do think that he is going to have Bo Nix ready. I think that he's going to have something cooked up for Howard and Blackman. But as far as defense, it's none other than Nick Bonito, and I'll cheat too, Nick Bonito and Zach Allen. Mm-hmm. I mean, Nick Bonito is an absolute menace, and he can do it all. He's not just a pass rusher. He's not just this guy who's going to get to your quarterback. Last year, he took one to the house. Okay, so he also can read your offense. And I know it was A.D. Mitchell sitting there taking his sweet time, sipping on a cup of tea before trying to haul it over to Richardson in one of the worst plays I've seen since, Chuck Pagano called the fake punt. But, those two are going to be huge. I mean, obviously, Pat Surtain's big. Hufanga's a big one. but it's up front and it's the pass rushing prowess of both those guys together. They can just absolutely give you too much up front, which is where it all starts and ends. Who are your offense? What's an offense? Or you could even cheat and do a couple, but offensively, defensively, who are your biggest threats from Denver?
Yeah, so on offense, I think we've talked about the pass game and how that might be a threat. Cortland Sutton, obviously, we just gave him his flowers there.
Sure.
I told you I expected a deep touchdown for Marvin Mims, so obviously I think that's a threat. But I do kind of want to go with one that we haven't highlighted this game, so I think it should be talked about, and that is RJ Harvey. You mentioned that 50-yard run he had.
He was explosive.
Yeah, and if you're kind of expecting, like I am, some explosiveness in terms of the passing game from Denver, you also want to limit that from the run game. You don't want to have them be explosive in two different areas. You don't want to see a guy like RJ Harvey who is explosive and is able to break off big runs like that, like go up the middle and take it for 40 yards or whatever. That's just, I feel like like a break in the break in the armor that you can't really recover from if they're able to attack you with someone explosive in the running game and also have those threats on the outside while you're banged up at corner. So I think what we saw in week 1 from the Colts defense was the run defense was the thing that I was most concerned about coming out of that game in terms of run fits from Zaire Franklin, Joe Bacci. And I think that this is a much better offensive line. Maybe the talent at running back's not to the level of Devon Achane, but I still think you have a guy in RJ Harvey who can take advantage of a well-blocked play and really break your back on that. So I am worried a little bit about RJ Harvey, and I hope the Colts run defense is a little bit more stout than it has been in the past. In terms of defense, you always want to say Pat Surtain. I think he's one of the best players in football, Pat Surtain, but I think the Colts offense is built in a way that you can kind of limit what Pat Surtain does. If he takes away Michael Pittman the entire game, I still think you're sitting okay.
You're talented.
If you just trade one for one, hey, your best player on defense is dealing with Michael Pittman. We'll take that trade and we'll play the other 10 on 10 and feel comfortable with the threats that we have against your other guys with Josh Downs, Tyler Warren, A.D. Mitchell, Alec Pierce, Jonathan Taylor. You have all these threats on the offensive side of the ball that I think you can threaten with. But I still think Pat Surtain, if he is a guy that you end up testing, you usually end up paying.
Yeah, and I love what Patrick said here. Let them take away Pittman, Warren, Downs, Pierce will destroy them. I mean, we'll see, but guess what, Patrick? That all goes back to because it's still a question mark. It's still a question mark with Daniel Jones. I don't know when you were able to join, Patrick, but Miami's defense is in complete disarray. So you can't discount what Jones was able to do, but you can say that what they're going to be facing is like night. I even said this in my article about the 5 keys. It's going to be night and day. Okay. It's a night and day difference as far as the coordinator, as far as the talent, as far as what the capabilities. Yeah. Like it's going to be truly, this is really the test for that offensive line and Daniel Jones. I mean, if they go and pass this and they beat Denver, I mean, you're talking about a whole different level of hype than even what you're seeing now with 17. So, but all right, Noah, here we go, big dog. Final score predictions. I can't stomach saying it first. Go and give yours.
I'll go first. I'm going to say this is going to be a lot closer than last week, obviously. I think that's safe to say. It's going to be closer than my prediction last week, which was completely off. If we're just going to be honest about that, me predicting a Dolphins win. I'm going to go 24-23. The Colts will win. And I don't feel super confident about that, but like I mentioned earlier in the show, I haven't seen a confident Colts team in a while. And I feel like, I mean, it's maybe hyperbolic after 1 week, but this is the most confident I've seen the Colts. They're meshing super well. They're super excited. Daniel Jones is going on Josh Downs' podcast, and they're talking about how they shredded up the Dolphins defense. They're a confident team right now, and I'm excited to see that. And I'm kind of excited
behind
to see
Daniel Jones.
Yeah.
They're behind their quarterback.
Yeah. They've rallied around it. I mean, and maybe that has something to do with it, rallying around a guy who bought in all the way and came into work and won the job and put out a really good performance in week 1. At home again, you're not having the Jim Irsay Hall of Fame or Ring of Honor induction at halftime. You're not having all these legends in the building, Peyton Manning, Marvin Harrison, all these guys watching the game. So maybe a little bit less of that hype and emotional boost that you might have gotten from week 1. I'm just banking on the fact that these two coaches and Shane Steichen and Lou Anarumo put out a clinic in week
They
one.
did. They did.
And I expect them to be in their bag again in week two and have these players playing super confidently and putting them in the right positions to come away with the win here.
Yeah, I'm going. Paul, don't say Peyton's going to be there because he works for the Broncos. Stop. He's got a freaking bronze statue that they erected of him outside of Lucas. So if Peyton's at Lucas Oil Stadium, he better be wearing a freaking Colts something. That whole stadium's there because of him. I'm going 17-14 Broncos. Now, I think this is going to be a defensive slugfest. I think you're going to see Nix throw some picks. I think you're going to see Jones maybe throw a pick, struggle a little bit more. You got two very talented coordinators here that have very talented football players. But here's what I think is going to turn the tide in Denver's favor. You don't have Charvarius Ward out there.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that Cortland Sutton is going to get his in this game. And I'll be honest with you guys. I don't think Bo Nix is that great of a quarterback. I think the tape shows it. I think, of course, you can't sit there and say that yet, but up to this point in his career, I mean, yeah, he played great last season. You know, they made the playoffs, but you can get to this kid. You can make him start running around and scrambling for dear life, you know, but I just think that this defense might be a little too much to handle. And I think that that's going to be the turning point. Now, could the Colts win? I'm also not confident in my prediction, Noah.
Yep.
Like, I'm really not. But if I'm going knee-jerk reaction, right, Paul, I know I suck. I know I suck, man. Sorry, dude. I can't be biased on this show. I just think that Denver's defensive talent, I think that that's going to be a little too much. I mean, I don't care if it's the Dolphins. I don't care if it's the Titans, the Chiefs, the Eagles. You create 28 pressures. That is horrifying. That is absolutely stay awake at night, can't fall asleep worrying about type stuff there. So we'll see, but that's what I've got. So Noah says Colts. I say Broncos. I will tell you guys right now, I hope to God I'm wrong, and that we're just singing Noah's praises on Monday. So
what I'm most excited about is just kind of getting some clarity on what this is. Right.
Yes,
I think I'm not going to speak for everybody. I don't know what the general consensus is, but me personally, I'm still kind of thinking, what did I just see week one? Is this
like too good to be true?
Is this it? Like, it doesn't, it seems like you go for it 3 for 3 on fourth down. That's like, you can't possibly do that good every game or be that consistent every game and convert that many fourth downs. You can't convert that many big plays with Daniel Jones when he's scrambling around and making those plays. I just feel like it has to regress a little bit. But I mean, when you're winning by what they did against Miami, when you regress a little bit, you're still in a good position. So I want to see kind of where that level is going to be at, because I feel like we were at the peak. We don't know where the valley is at this point. I feel like we're going to be a little bit more confident with our predictions as we get later on in the season. But here in week 2, we're still kind of trying to figure out what this Colts team is.
Yeah. And I real quick, I love that Noah said that, because I can't remember the last time. It probably was when Andrew Luck was the quarterback. I can't remember the last time the Colts absolutely beat the living crap out of a football team. Okay. So you're already, after that game, I was like, hell yeah. And then I was like, hold on. hold on, man. We got the Broncos next. Let's just slow it down a little bit. But anyway, guys, we got to get the heck out of here. Like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook. Follow Indianapolis Colts on SI.com. And as always, on X, we are at Colts_SI. Subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle on YouTube and click the bell to turn on the notifications. Want to listen to the Horseshoe Huddle podcast? Noah's got us covered. Subscribe on Apple, Spotify, wherever else you listen and absorb your podcasts, and so much more. Guys, we will be right back here. And I lied. I initially said we were going to do 8:30. Screw that. We're doing 7 p.m., sticking to it. Nothing's changing. Per the network, we got to keep this bad boy at 7 p.m., so it's probably best for everybody anyway. Don't even have to change your schedules. I know that everyone's got Horseshoe Huddle as a weekly reminder on Mondays and Thursdays like I do. So everyone, enjoy the rest of your week. Have a great weekend. here we go. We got week 2. This is far bigger than what the Dolphins matchup was, but we will see you guys again on Monday, hopefully talking about not my prediction, but Noah's of a Colts win. So until then, take care.